Welcome to the Scientist Sage Sangha. I am Nancy Anderson Dolan from Wise Heart Wellness, and we're so glad you could join us tonight for another conversation about interesting topics that might open your mind. And tonight we're talking about breath. And it's a really interesting thing because it's defined really narrowly in the dictionary as breathing air into your lungs. There's so much more to it than that. And it really, we've sort of lost our reverence for breath in the modern world. In, the olden days, Indigenous peoples always thought that breath was this miraculous thing. And there was such reverence for it and curiosity about it and study and practice and all sorts of things like that. And that has just dropped away. It's rare that you find people that have any sort of deep experience or knowledge in that way anymore. So we're going to take a bit of a walk around in some of that stuff and just some of the current people that are finding out the old things anew and how they're being used. The TEDx talk that was in the email this week, I love Elizabeth, and she talked about the breath as being the only continual resource that we have from birth to death. And there's lots of people that talk about that. And the idea of talking about breath awareness was what she was doing, and conscious breathing patterns, sort of chosen breathing patterns, that she thinks we're granted access to a superpower. And it really is like that because it does so many things for us. It settles your mind and it calms your body and it can take you into different states. There's a lot of talk about altered states and breathing, just paying attention, the awareness of your breath. So you don't have to be doing any particular fancy breathing style or anything like that. And well, so many of those are wonderful too. They bring all sorts of particular good things on their own. But just paying attention to your breath, it sort of takes us back behind the noise and creates a little space. And that was talked about, in ancient Buddhist texts. And that's what she's talking about today in her TEDx talk, because giving us a little space. And when we take that breath, and people actually say things like, wait a minute, I just got to stop and take a breath. And they don't mean it in the deep way we might be talking about, but it's true. I just need to catch my breath and sit down and go, okay. But literally, we come back into our bodies. And that, again, is a Buddhist practice from ancient times. And the Michael Singer that wrote the Surrender Experiment and I can't remember the other book right now, but he works with this idea about our breath being this beginning of this opening to ourselves. And we can be fully present in our bodies with our breath. And when we're there, all sorts of really magical things happen. We hear those inner urges and inner just sort of nudges to guide us on our way. We don't get so tied up and overwrought about things that might not be going our way on a day-to-day basis. We just come back and it literally brings us back to, wow. And one of the things that a lot of people talked about, and I encourage people to think about when they wake up, is can you imagine out of millions and millions and millions of planets, and there's not another one within millions of light years that has an atmosphere that we could breathe. So we're so lucky to be here on this planet with the atmosphere that allows us to breathe. It's like a little miracle every day. And that really, the first thing that we do when we come into the world is we inhale. And the last thing we do is exhale. So our breath is with us all the way as like a guardian and a support and a nurturing. So I really encourage people to use it as a nurturing presence, like a good friend that's going to be with you your whole life. And if we can't take a breath, we do something about it fairly quickly, or we don't survive. And so we pay attention to breath. when it's life or death. But often on a day-to-day basis, we're not paying any attention to our, unless it's bad and then we eat some candy to make it smell better. That's about as far as we go with it, you know? Or maybe when we're walking up a big hill, we wonder a little bit. But often that is important to know, that our breath does all of this stuff. And we can use it like to get courage, take a deep breath and go ahead. And we can use it to go to sleep. Long, slow breaths tell our body that it's time to rest. So there's really practical, functional things about breath. But also there is this idea of catching a breath at a certain speed that we maybe should look at living at. And so we talk about catching our breath, and that means to just slow down and take a moment, in the onslaught of all life's choices and activities and that, to just catch our breath. And of course, you can't like actually catch your breath, but it really has deep meaning for most people to take time to catch a breath. And it usually just starts with that big inhale and exhale, When we do that, a lot of things happen. The HeartMath Institute teaches a particular kind of breathing and shows, and there's a graph about that in the email, shows how our brain becomes more coherent when we're doing that kind of breathing. And just a slow 6 in, 6 out, nothing really fancy, but literally changes our thinking patterns. We can become coherent again. And we also, when we do that, we store memories and information better. And so deep breathing while you're learning something or studying or trying to, have a conversation with someone that you want to remember the things that they're saying, it's really effective. As soon as our brain goes into that, oh, all clear, all is well, when the signal's sent out with those deep, slow breaths, our whole priorities in our brain and our body, it shifts. Our attention shifts, and we drop out of survival mode. And then we can sort of tend to everyday things with a little more efficiency and a little more effectiveness. And even then, like when we take that time to catch our breath, we might notice that we see our longer term plans in context. So if I'm running around thinking, oh, I got to get this done before I go, and it could be something simple like the dishes or get the dogs walked, or that, I want to get done. But when I'm thinking I have to do it like this, and I'm breathing heavier or lighter actually, because I've just got to do this. My body's tense, my lungs don't open up as much, and I don't think as clearly. And so I might not be able to do those priorities, much less anything towards my long-term plans. So if I'm taking that deep, slow breath, taking a moment, and I encourage people to, like make a list in the morning of what they want to do in the day, and then breathe into the list. And it's amazing when I do that, I get the most organized day. And it's surprising because I might get up and the dog's got to go outside right away. And I don't want to wash my face first. But I take them out and then I notice they're playing in the yard. So I do the couple of dishes that are in the sink. And then we come back and we have a little meditation and my breathing's better again. And then I go and I can, in a really simple, very clear way, get dressed and organized to go. And then I'm surprised the dishes are already done because I was just taking this bigger, slower pace, breathing deeply, letting my brain open up. So it really is a huge thing in all of those ways, but it changes your body too. When I'm really when I'm really cold and I'm outside walking my dogs, like it's been cold where I live lately, I do a lot of deep breathing to keep my hands warm, because I just breathe into my hands and I can feel the circulation start to move into my hands. And I have a condition where I don't get very good circulation in my fingers unless I am doing it sort of mechanically and with a lot of conscious awareness. And it helps things like digestion, Because if we're in that fight or flight mode and survival mode, our body is not prioritizing digestion. So people don't digest food well. And all sorts of things come out of that. Lots of different kinds of immune system problems, blood pressure, all of those kinds of things. And so when I can take that time and use my breath effectively, there's so many things when I forget things, which I do a lot. Old age and ADD are difficult mix. So I'll literally take a couple of deep breaths and literally think, what was I doing here? And often there's a number of outcomes. I don't necessarily remember the exact thing I was going to do, but what happens is I don't care anymore. I'm back in my body, back in my breath, and my awareness is like, it's not that big a deal. I'll remember it if I need to. And so it really is this lovely piece of settling us to move forward in life. And our souls even actually reconnect at that time. And so we think of a bigger life rather than just, I'm a mom and I got to get this done, or I'm a wife and I got to do that. And it's not I'm a anything, I'm a just me. And it is, what's next in my life? And so when I'm breathing through my daily list like that, I often find that what's next is actually take a break. And I might be doing something, but I consciously do that deep breathing while I'm doing it. And so I get that bigger and bigger experience of that. We don't get to enjoy life if we're not present with it. And so a lot of the time, just breathing like this really helps people have more enjoyment of life. And Michael Singer, that I was talking about earlier, he really describes this experience of Satori. And Satori is just like, oh, wow, wait, I'm really here. I'm right here, right now. And he talks about following his breathing and being so surprised because he was an economics student. He was in business and he got surprised by his breath. And his breath actually took him out to the forest and to breathe. And he stayed as a sort of 60s hippie kind of guy when he made that change. But he was also able to go back and really easily finish his PhD and the work for it. The story is so lovely. He just did his breath exercises, flipped open his textbook to several spots, went in to take the test because he hadn't been going to the classes. And on the test were the three things that he opened his book to while he was doing his breathing exercises. And so this idea of breathing like that, now I'm not suggesting that people don't go to school and study. Don't get me wrong there. But I am suggesting that when you're doing that deeper breathing and your mind's expanded, that you will get those nudges from the universe, that you will have a deeper capacity than you did before to connect pieces of information and stay deeply relaxed in your mind and your body. And when people are deeply relaxed in their mind and body, they perform better. I was watching one of the playoff football games that was happening right now at this season when I'm recording this. And they were talking about a young quarterback that had been worked with by one of the people that support them emotionally and mentally. And he had learned a bunch of these kinds of exercises. And so he could take all the stress of difficult things and the games and the pressure on him and all sorts of things like that. I thought, isn't it a wonderful thing that they're talking about that about a football game and explaining how important it was for him to be able to do that. So there's all that. Oh, it's just so useful. The line I used in here is that we are saner, safer, sweeter, smarter, and more spiritually oriented when we take conscious care with our breath. And so that all begs the question, as I put in the email, that why don't we do it? Because there are some obstacles, we'll say, to it. if we don't believe that it's worthwhile, we're like, why would I take on an extra job? My body's already doing it on its own. I don't need to waste any of my brain space on the breathing thing. It's already taken care of. The problem is we can think a thought and contract our lungs. We literally, one single thought can contract our lungs. When we are afraid, our body comes forward like this and we can't breathe this way. And when our body is tense, any part of our body, our hands, our arms, our butt, whatever, we don't get as good circulation. So it isn't the same thing as when we consciously. Now we can train ourselves to have being that open, deeper breathing as our default. But most of us today don't have that as our default. We have a certain stress level as our default. And so this idea, just saying, to remember the crucial role that breathing plays in all this healing and living well, and the evidence about how fast people heal when they are doing conscious breathing is just absolutely clear. It doesn't matter whether they're healing from a burn or a broken leg or a surgery, all of it heals faster when we are participating in the breathing. So that's the first one. But then this idea about not having time, like I was saying, we're pressed for time. We don't want to take on another thing. But when you breathe, there is so much time opened up. The voice in our head that is constantly saying, you should be doing this. I don't like that. That's not the way I'd like it. I want this to be over there. I want, that voice tones down when you're doing conscious breathing. And Singer talks about appearing in front of himself and noticing that, wow, I'm relaxed back here. And that voice is saying all these strange things. Like, you should be doing this. No, that, well, we have to do all that. And I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable here. I want it to be sunny. Why is it raining? It always rains for me. And that noise, when people just pay attention to their breath, goes down and down and down. And that's what they talk about as satori. And it is that freedom from our mind. And then our mind is just looking at the amazing things that are like, oh, look at, oh, that felt so good. It's back in sync with our soul. So this idea of time, yeah, it does take time to sit down and pay attention and just breathe, but the payoff is so huge in the number of doctor visits and misunderstandings and forgetfulness and poor choices and so many things. I, for a long time, treated eating disorders primarily. And one of the things that we always worked through was, how are you going to breathe through the cravings? How are you going to breathe through the tension in your body? How are you going to breathe through the disappointments without using something? And I do that today. I talk about that today with addicts of all kinds. And the breath helps us do that too. Whatever we're up against, we can breathe through it. And it's like it greases the wheels. And so it's useful to take time. Then you have so much more time because you don't have to go to the doctor and you don't have to fight that battle in your head all the time. It changes us fundamentally, and we appreciate things more. So we literally are appreciating our time more. We're appreciating things, so we're not sort of wasting time on bickering with ourselves about whether it's a good idea to go out for a hike or not. We show up to our life, and we don't have to control life so aggressively as so many of us try to do. So the time thing is, yes, there's a time investment, and the payoff is worth it. And then the other thing that people are really, really uncertain about, we'll say uncertain is a nice word, is that often when we're doing breath work, we get feelings in our bodies that we're not comfortable with. And we go, wait a minute. And then we see those things in our minds and we're like, I don't want to be that person that's thinking those thoughts. And it's, well, you've been that person all along, but they're just coming into your consciousness now. And if we can take the compassion into those things, there is freedom on the other side of whatever is coming up when we do the breathing. And I encourage people to think about that more than anything. Like, I can do this. I can sit with this. Me and my breath, we can sit with anything. And lots of time people have what they call abreactions, and it's literally a full body memory of an old traumatic event. And it releases, though, because we've often had these events and not been able to release them. They're resting in our body. Well, kind of restless, actually, but they're in our body still. There's a lovely book called The Body Knows by Gabor Mate, and it really talks about how the body knows what's happened and our brain doesn't necessarily. But as we breathe, we clear a lot of that. And that's such a good deal because you don't have to go to therapy. You don't have to spend so much money and go places, less appointments. So again, another time saver. You get to live more deeply in your body when you clear out all that extra stuff. And there's this inner consciousness, this inner wisdom that is in there that gets to come out when you are not just trying to control all the surface kind of discomfort. So it's a huge deal. And then the next one, it was about that we're deluded that we think what we have out here on the outside creates how we feel on the inside. That's a very momentary thing, because often what we put on the outside is so impermanent and temporary that we get a good feeling for a moment, but we don't get to rest in the happy feeling. And when people are just breathing into each moment, it's just not so important what each moment holds. The next moment's going to hold another breath, and we just breathe through it. And whatever is going well for us or not well for us at the moment, we don't have to grasp so much because we can trust the ebb and flow of it. And so we might be, this is a new experience. I got these needles in the back of my head for nerve blockers for migraines. And I went in there and I'm like, oh no, I hate needles. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I got to breathe to relax here because that's going to be what it's called for. It'll be more problematic. And I did that. And then I was like, I got really curious, like, this is so interesting. And then it was, these people are so nice. And the experience, theoretically was quite unpleasant, but it wasn't that's not my memory and not my experience of it. My experience was, this was so interesting. And that is a function of breathing into the present moment, because you're here and then you're here and then you're here, instead of like being back here and going, oh, it's going to be horrible. Oh, this is not good. Oh, this is awful. It was a horrendous experience. So you can have a different experience of the whole timeline with just that deep breathing. So it really, I really encourage people to think about that the breath is sort of the way we pave the road through our experiences. And those that experience it with breath, that determines how we feel about it. And we get a life that feels a little more whole and connected because we're not trying to hold anything back or run to get something that'll make me feel better. I'm just in each moment. And that's really what I want to talk about, just the deep application of it. And in the email, there's a number of suggestions about routes that you can try out to move into this further. And I'd encourage you to take a look at that and use them. But remember, first of all, it's good to breathe. No matter what it comes up in that moment, there'll be another moment right behind it. And as you breathe, you move more gracefully through each one. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to breathe a little bit. So thank you to the people that are with me, and feel comfortable turning off your Zoom cameras if you want, and getting comfortable in a way that you can breathe. So if you're sitting up, sit up straight, or if you want to stretch out and lay down, that's good too. So, okay. just literally notice first how you're breathing. One of the most annoying things for me as I explored breath work originally was they said, don't affect your breath, just let it be. But the moment I thought about it, I started affecting it. I would be like, am I breathing right? And so just go through whatever it's like, paying attention. It might be that it's easier for you to pay attention taking a deep breath. You might just sort of sit back behind yourself and notice that you're breathing shallow. It doesn't matter what you notice, it just matters that you do notice. And I know for me, one of the ways that I notice my breath is I put my hand on my heart and my hand on my guts so that I remember to breathe into my heart. So this is a whole body experience, not just breathing air into my lungs. I literally imagine breathing air into my lungs, but also through my heart. And if you can ease into a deeper breath, you might notice that you start to feel a little tingling in your extremities. Just go slow and steady. I'm not going to instruct you to keep your mouth closed or hold one nostril down. This is just the first look at it and keeping it simple. And there are a lot of great breathing things. And I've put some links in the email that I sent. And I've actually even attached a handout to the email called diaphragmatic breathing. And that's why I put my hand on my stomach. Because I want to feel my diaphragm filling up and then releasing. And if you want to, imagine light coming in with your breath. Just bringing light in and letting it move through your body as the oxygen exchange actually happens in your body. That divinity of your breath moving through every cell of your body. They're having grand conversations in there. Your brain is going, oh, that feels better. Doesn't feel quite so overwhelmed. And if your mind is busy, there's a picture over my shoulder here. One of the first things I was given about learning about breath, to just imagine myself in a beautiful place in nature. And breathe in like you're smelling all the great nature smells. And just to sit still. Now in the picture, there's a person sitting cross-legged. And you're welcome to do that if you can. But the other thing I would suggest is make sure you're comfortable. Sitting perfectly still isn't the aim. Breathing is. And through the breathing, your body might tell you, no, I'd like to move this. So we want you to listen. Your breath and your body are partners. Just notice or imagine breathing peace into your body. If your body is getting tenser, go a little easier at it. Just very gently, filling up, letting go. This is the space in your day. And it can take practice and persistence to create more spaciousness. So I encourage you to consider that. You might do it at particular times. I like to breathe just before I eat. I like to breathe in traffic. When I wake up first thing, before I go to sleep. Just touching base with my friend, the breath. Okay, for those of you that are watching this later, thank you. And you can find out more about these sessions with an email at scientistsage@gmail.com. And your suggestions, comments, donations, suggestions for word of the week would be gratefully received. So thank you so much. I am with you, you are with me. Blessed be.